Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Miguel, and this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I get to interview an amazing Black woman every single day throughout the month of February. And today I am so delighted to speak with Ashley Grant, who is an experienced curator and community builder. She has a phenomenal story. I can't wait for you to hear all about it. Hey, Ashley.
Hi, Laura.
Thanks for joining. So good to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, first question, always awesome. Your answer, I think, will be awesome too. Ashley, what was your first job?
My first real job or my first job?
Whichever one you like. It can be your first job when you're a kid or when you're a grown up, whatever you feel like it.
So I started in the retail industry, I think like so many people. My first job was at the Gap. And I went into retail because I always thought I wanted to be in fashion. Fast forward to college, and my first real job post-college, right after college, was Iconics Brand Group. It's actually a brand and like licensing company, and I did a lot of different fashion shows and like production with them, as well as just marketing and PR. So that was my first real job.
Awesome. Okay. Many people have started at the Gap and have gone to do great things like yourself. So it totally makes sense. So my next question for you is, how did we get to have this conversation right now? What was the journey from the Gap till now?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly once I kind of was in that fashion industry within retail on the fashion kind of the fashion runways and working in that world, I realized that as glamorous as it seems on the outside, when you're in it, it's not so much. You're significantly underpaid, undervalued, and I quickly realized that I didn't want to be in that industry, but I realized that I wanted to be doing the things that I was doing still. So like the events, the marketing, the branding aspect of things, bringing people together, and that was really what was important to me. So that's kind of what brought me to community building and what brought me to curating experiences for brands, but just not in the fashion world.
So tell me more about this whole idea around curating experiences. I think I oftentimes hear people talking about how they know how to curate experiences, and I'm like, that is not what we do. And I know that you are brilliant at it. So could you help define us, like what it actually means to truly create a curated experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all boils down to intentionality, especially when it comes to people. That would be how I would describe it. So, um, the experience itself is, of course, where is it going to be? When is it going to be? What's going to happen at the event or experience, etc. But I think the curation piece also comes into play with who's going to be there, who's going to meet one another, what's the content or what's the conversation going to look like, what makes sense to bring people together and why. I always like to say that I'm the person that's the why behind connections and behind an experience as a whole, not just the who, what, where, when.
And that's so important because I think that's oftentimes where people are like, well, it's just a matter of bringing the people together. Like, no. What's the story? How are we building it? So tell me about a time about what's one of your all-time favorite events that you've curated?
I'd say my one of my most recent projects was getting together people based on um, an application process. So I know whenever I feel like whenever people hear application, they think, oh, it's this kind of black hole of a thing where you may hear back, you may not. And I think when I think application, I think job application. However, when it comes to an event application, especially when it comes to communities and membership communities, for instance, it's definitely a bit more personal. Every single one is read, and I kind of implemented this entire system that tapped in not only the kind of professional things that were important to people, but also the personal things. And it becomes like a matchmaking process. So I'd say on my most recent project, it was called The Exchange, and it was an exchange of knowledge, resources, experiences, and of course, just people, and bringing the right people together. So, curating those experiences meant getting the right people in the room, and through that, like I said, it was a very thorough application process, to make sure that their time was, valued, their time made sense. Going back to what you just said, as far as the experience curation, it's really like the people, like bottom line, it's the people, it's getting the right people in the room.
And so you work with a lot of folks in tech, and I think sometimes folks are like, well, tech people aren't that really social. So how have you been able to kind of help folks who may be a little bit shy kind of come out their shells when you do your experiences?
Yeah, as soon as people get to my events, well, one, this sounds very simple, but not a lot of people do it. I feel like in the event space, they're so kind of hooked up on the logistics of everything that they forget about who's going to be there. I stalk the hell out of the people that are going to be at my events. So it's really important for them to feel understood and heard and familiar. So I get super familiar with the people ahead of time. I typically will get them together ahead of time, whether it's as a group physical event, maybe it's a virtual event that takes place prior. And then I'll also make sure that, I know them. So they get there, I know them. They'll typically know at least one other person in the room just to kind of set the tone. And then jumping into vulnerability, for me, I find that what's worked the most and the best has been to open people up as people first rather than getting into business. So you want to kind of always leave business and anything kind of on the more serious or the, what someone can do for me kind of mindset. You always want to get personal first.
That's interesting. And you find that, like, with folks, again, especially in the tech universe, 'cause I think this is oftentimes where the magic can happen, is like getting people to be vulnerable. Like, what's a good icebreaker to kind of get folks to sort of open up that way?
People love talking about themselves, and people also love reminiscing. So I love childhood things. Like I love kind of bringing, and you have to be a little bit kind of a little careful with it, because not you can't assume that everyone's childhood brings good and happy thoughts, if you will. But typically it's like a question like, what was your favorite thing about your childhood? Or even the question that you open up with, Laura, like, what was your first job? Like things like that, things that bring you back to a memory and kind of let you reflect, are often things that people, one, they know the answers already. It's not something that they have to think about. And two, it's nice. It typically is like, oh, like I remember that, and they can speak on it easily.
It's funny because, like, part of the reason that I always do the first job question is because everyone always laughs or smiles. And it is something whereby, like, it does create a fond memory, like and even if it was like the worst job ever, like you do kind of remark back about, like, oh my God, I started here and now I'm here. So it
Right.
does give people a moment to, like, oh yeah, I knew how to fold all those white t-shirts. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, even if it's a bad memory, you're so far removed from it, you've healed from it, you can kind of look back on it and laugh.
And so once you've gotten folks to be a little bit more vulnerable, like, what is there a sort of a secret that you sort of found in, like, the decade or so that you've been at this, that really gets people? Is it like really amazing food? Is it like a unique venue? Like, what are those sort of like other elements that make it so awesome, to make the experience unforgettable?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a combination of all of the things. It's making sure that you don't fall short on anything, but I personally like to kind of double down on things like environment. So I will never host, like, let's say a dinner or anything, or really anything in a public space or a semi-private space. It has to be private. It has to feel like it's a safe space. It has to feel like, and it also has to bring their attention inwards to the event or to the experience, where they're not getting distracted. They don't feel like anyone else is kind of a part of it besides those who've been those who've been selected to be there. So I would say the top of my list is always privacy and a very specific environment that showcases what the goal is of the experience itself.
And how do you make sure people have used discretion? Are you like taking folks' phones away, or are you like being like, this is not the game, y'all?
Typically it's in the communications prior. So and also, like I said, I communicate with them going into it. But yeah, I'll usually provide kind of like community or experience guidelines, if you will. And it's typically always playful. I certainly don't want anyone to be afraid of anything or them feel like they can't do anything. It's more like, don't you want to pay attention to XYZ, or like kind of unlock and escape, which is ironic because one of the retreat series that I did used to be called Escape. But yeah, I think it's more so about kind of positioning it to being something that they want to do rather than something that they can't do.
Got it. It's just like, listen, for everyone, you want to have a good experience. So like, this is not to be live streamed on TikTok.
Right. Yeah.
And so talk to me about a time where you were working on a project and you're like, there's no way I'm going to get through this. And then you did.
I'd say, yeah, my most recent experience with one of our exchanges, and like I said, the experience series was called Exchange. But there was this one event that I really did not think we were going to pull through and get people to Milwaukee. I mean, when you think of Milwaukee, what do you think of when you think of Milwaukee, Laura?
Cold and snow.
Right, in the middle of nowhere, kind of. I mean, yes. People also forget how close it is to Chicago. It's just an hour north, and that's kind of how
it's like The Shining. I've been there. It's The Shining.
Beautiful city, though. I think it's actually underrated. But regardless, we really had to sell it. I mean, getting people to Milwaukee was tough. But it's, once again, I think what a lot of companies and brands do is they go to the major cities, they host these events, and not just for convenience, but also just, because typically the shiny things, the nicest things happen in the biggest cities. But I think when you focus on who's going to be somewhere and like the caliber of people and the content that's going to be absorbed, and you kind of shift the value to being about that rather than about where it's taking place, I think that it can become much more of a stronger kind of sense of, I don't know, like almost FOMO. It's like, okay, I don't care that it's, in Milwaukee. I care. They've said that they've vetted these people, like they're going to be the right people in the room, and the conversation is going to be awesome. I can tell by the communications that have gone out. And then it, as we double down on those communications and making sure that they felt like they really needed to be there. It didn't matter where it was.
Awesome. And what was the result?
I mean, we sold out. We ended up selling, the tickets that needed to be sold. We selected it. Like I said, it was also based off of the application process. So we selected a really amazing group of people, and we got them from Milwaukee, from all over the country and even beyond. I mean,
and what did folks say when they got there?
Oh my gosh, they were obsessed. And they were actually obsessed with the venue as well, because it was completely private. We actually had bought out this boutique hotel. And it was also not just it wasn't really a hotel. It's actually it's a guest house. It was a guest house that we had, and everyone kept saying, wow, this is incredibly thoughtful. Like, they all shared a kitchen. They all had their own rooms and everything, but it was like the shared spaces. It just really was all about building community and having those nooks and crannies where you could go off and talk to someone one-on-one, or make coffee in the morning as a group, or things like that. So I think that people really, once they got there, they were like, okay, I understand why you brought us to Milwaukee, because there's no other venue and space that is conducive to what you're trying to build here.
It made sense. It literally made sense.
Right.
Wow. Would never have thought about that. I mean, having gotten roped into going to an event in Milwaukee, I will say that once we got there, oh, this is really cool. But, whoo, child, it's middle of nowhere.
Right.
So, okay. alrighty, this is what we're gonna be doing. All right, so you get this. So you're this amazing curator. You've done this really awesome stuff. What do you think you'd tell like 18-year-old Ashley now having done all this stuff for the last decade or more?
An 18-year-old. Oh my gosh. I mean, definitely, this sounds so cliche, but you and I were talking about it earlier, and I do completely believe it. And it's do something that you really enjoy. Because as soon as you don't do something you enjoy, especially when it comes to work, it starts to feel very much like a chore. It's you feel unenthused. You feel lacking, and work is so much a big part of our lives that I think it's just really important to select something that you wholeheartedly like enjoy and feel like you're good at. I think that's another one. Like kind of doubling down on your strengths and making sure that you feel good at work, not only in, what it provides you, but also what you provide it.
I think it's so important. And, coming out of COVID times, and I think, it's weird to say that we're now in year 4 of COVID times. Because it's like BC before COVID and then AC after COVID. And in terms of how we all do our jobs, especially in the event side of the house, where things so much has changed in terms of how we interact, how we build, how we connect with each other. It really is what matters, what doesn't matter. And I think that's a big differentiator that I think we've all kind of learned having, spent a year and change stuck inside. You realize what matters and what gives you peace and what gives you joy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I think it's undervalued especially when we're young. Like when I was young, I was just thinking about, being successful and doing what I had to do and quote unquote climbing the ladder and things like that. And I just so happened to, work for a company that I really believed in and enjoyed my job. But I think it could have very easily gone the opposite way. With the mentality of just, simply quote unquote succeeding.
Yeah, because I think what we define as success now has changed. Because it's like, okay, well, I have a job that I really like, and I have time to like put into the passions that, are things that are outside of my job. And versus I'm trying to, work 90 hours a week for this supposedly mythical salary. I think that our priorities have definitely shifted as a result of a global pandemic time. Basically, everybody, sit your ass down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we needed time to think. We needed time to recalibrate. I know it. I did, especially in the event space. I mean, Laura, I was definitely at risk, and I was just, happy to have a job, have a role, and then also be able to pivot. I mean, I built the entire virtual events program and then, eventually hybrid, etc. Like it all built on one another, and luckily shifted for the better.
Your Rolodex must be going almost like mine. I think you know a guy in Milwaukee, so which even I don't know. So there, and because apparently someone has a guest house out there. When I think now about like, oh my gosh, doing virtual events, I mean, I think I did something like 80. How many did you guys do?
Oh my gosh. I actually hired the the last person, like when I transitioned into doing the exchanges program, I had hired someone, and at that point I had done over 200, I want to say. Over
200 virtual events.
yeah,
Oh
in
my
2 years.
God, girl.
Yeah.
And how many people were on those each time? Like 20 or like 100?
I mean, it depended. It could be anywhere between, a dozen to like 500. And when I say, even when it's hundreds of people, sometimes they were webinar style, but a lot of the time they were actually interactive events, like where we were talking, breakouts with hundreds of people. We're talking, polls and kind of like activities. I mean, we've also done things where it's like, you bring in the chef and you kind of or you send something to someone's house, and it's very interactive. Or we're having a lunch and learn, and we've sent you a gift card, and now everyone's kind of getting their lunch together. I mean, it's been a lot of different things. You had to get creative during that time to make people want to come and sit in front of a screen with you.
it feels like 100 years ago. It really does. Because I can't tell you how many virtual events I did. And now if you were to ask me to do a virtual event, I'd probably make such a face at you and be like, really? Please don't make me.
I know.
Please. Please don't make me.
I know, and that's why I was so excited to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind a virtual event here or there, but yeah, that's why I was so excited to jump out of that role because I had, like I said, I had built that whole team. I mean, I had a team of, I want to say like 8 or 10 under me at that point because it got so big, and I mean, at first I was on every single call, and then I can only be on I can only be at one place at one time. So we ended up, hiring facilitators and contractors to help, us scale that program. But as soon as I could get back to events, in-person events, oh gosh, I was out of there.
It is funny because it's like, you do live events, then you switch to virtual events, and then you come back and it's like, oh, everyone's gonna be hybrid. And I was like, yeah, lies. Everyone went back to live really quickly.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's in the job market too. Everyone's saying that even their roles are quote unquote hybrid, and then you get it, and they're like, oh, but you're in the office 5 days a week, but you might have one day that you can work from home, and they call it hybrid.
yeah, that's what they call a hybrid. Uh-huh. Yep, sure. Uh-huh. Entirely. Makes perfect sense. And it's interesting because, I think that, as event people, we do have this specialized view of like people and human interaction, how they behave, probably more than anybody else, because we're the people that create things that make people want to do something outside of their regular day.
Right.
Whether it's, hey, come to this dinner, come to this webinar, like understanding the science and psychology of people, I think is a very innate skill that oftentimes we don't talk about enough in the land of experiential and experiences.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, it's even when speaking about my career and all that I've done with other people on the outside looking in, they always kind of think, oh, you're an event planner, like cool, like they only think the logistics, I think, instead of like the people piece, which is why I always say like I'm not an event planner or even an event producer. That's why I like saying I'm an experience curator because it's kind of all encompassing of just not just the logistics piece, but the people piece. And I completely agree, Laura. Like we are people wranglers, like, and to get people somewhere, and to make sure that they are enjoying themselves, and to get them out of and to come somewhere instead of spending that time with their family or friends or anything like that's definitely a skill.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that it's like you basically are cultural anthropologists, and that's why people who are in events are the most malleable in any job. Because basically, if you can convince somebody to leave their house at 5 o'clock to be somewhere at 6:30 to meet a bunch of people they had never had no idea what and drink and eat food that they didn't expect they'd be having and do it monthly,
Yeah.
that's magic. But that comes from understanding people, understanding people's motivations, understanding the audience in a way that you only do with working for folks for years and years. Like just like how you understand the tech brain of folks who are founders that will create something that makes them leave their house, makes them get up from behind the computer, makes them put down the video game. Like
Hmm.
that is such a unique set of circumstances and skills. And like I said, I love event people because we're on another planet, fully on another planet, and that's what happens. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. Like it allows you to always be able to read a room really well and kind of see who needs to talk to, so no one's by themselves. Like all that
Hmm.
is so much more all encompassing in what we do versus I'm gonna make sure that you had a canapé. Like it's so much
Hmm.
more than that.
Yeah, I mean the way that we I was lucky enough to be able to hire my best friend in my last role actually. And he didn't interview, but he interviewed in a different way, which is what I think. Honestly, I think that when it comes to events roles, this should kind of be the way things work. And it's on the job kind of like observing. And it's like I hired him to kind of freelance with us for South by Southwest of all things. So it was a crazy time. And I already knew what he was capable of, but I think having him there on the go and our founders being able to see just how observant he was and making sure that they had everything they needed, the guests had everything they needed, and just like checking on things. And like it's easy to say like, oh yeah, I'm super organized and I'm my attention to detail is great, and like the interviews are, anyone can say that on an interview, but when you see it and it's something that just comes natural to someone, I think that that's really how you determine who's good for a job or not.
Yeah, you have to be. It is a very special side of skills to be able to feel comfortable in any room. And I think I think sometimes folks are always amazed when you see lots of Black women doing it. It's like, yeah, we can fit into any room.
Mm-hmm.
Like we walk in and everyone kind of knows we're the boss. Like it is a thing, and it is a gift and sometimes a curse. But it allows us because we inherently find ways to make people feel welcome, which is why I have so many friends in the industry that I love, because I think we gravitate towards roles that enable us to play to our strengths, which are building community, making people feel welcome, getting people together in a way that makes everyone feel good versus just like having people feel disparate and weird. Because we all know you've been to events where they suck and you're like, did no one think about XYZ?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, the Black community, just in general, I'd love to kind of touch on that for a moment. I think just the way our families are made up and the dynamic of like us having a community beyond our quote unquote like blood family. Like even the way I grew up and my mom saying, oh, this is your aunt, blah, 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 your uncle, blah, blah, blah. And it's like these people were not my aunts and uncles, but they
but
were.
not my blood, but
But it's like they were, because that's how we treat everyone, really. That's how we
Mhm.
treat our loved ones, and even people that we just meet. I remember my mom used to always be known for meeting people on the bus and kind of them instantaneously becoming her friends. So I think that I kind of got that, and I think that a lot of us kind of get that from how we are just as people and culturally, and wanting people to feel welcome. And events is a great space to be in when you have that kind of foundation.
it really is interesting that you're so right about that, because it's like, yeah, my mom talking to people on the bus. I was like, why are you talking to strangers? And she's just like, oh, it is a very similar thing in terms of like, again, making people feel welcome and at home, like, and it doesn't feel like it's forced. Like, we've been to
Yes.
events where you're like, oh, really? Energy off.
Right.
So, like I think it's same with anything I've watched, anything you've already done. I kind of had like it's always this nice, chill vibe. You have this beautiful sense of style that like I'm always pleased at. I'm an event snob, so when I go to other people's events, I'm like, what's wrong here? And and you do a beautiful job always.
Oh, thank you.
So you've done all this really amazing work and you do so many amazing things. What does Ashley do for Ashley? What do you do for your self-care?
My self-care. Oh, that's a good one. Honestly, it's on my list to do better in that area. Not only in the event space, but my personal life as well. I tend to do a lot of things for other people. So I do feel like I'm lacking in that area of self-care. But I mean, when it comes to just, I guess, my doing things that I want to do, this sounds ridiculous, but I just love helping other people. I guess a little bit of my self-care is kind of doing what I love to do and what I like to do, which is bonding and like making the lives of my loved ones easier. So allowing for them to kind of lean on me for things. That really does kind of feed myself. But outside of that, when we're talking self-care, like just for me type of deal, um, I'd say just honestly relaxation, like being in my home. I love interior design. I love to make a space like incredibly welcoming. Um, and kind of building that out, like taking really nice showers. So I built myself an amazing shower that I never want to leave, and a bathtub, and getting a pedicure. I love getting my feet done. Not so much of a hands girl, but love getting a pedicure. Those are like my self-care tips, I guess, for myself.
Awesome. I mean, I am much more of a manicure than a pedicure girl.
Okay.
Like, because someone was telling me the other day, like, Laura, if I don't see your nails done, I know something's wrong. So, and I was like, you know what, you're right. Because you know what it is, I will tell you this, it is a lesson I learned from a friend of mine at work, my very first job in advertising. And she was like, "Come with me. Like, go. Let's go. We're gonna get our nails done." I'm like, "We have work to do." She's like, no, 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 because she was like tangentially my boss.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to this nail salon around the corner from her office, and she's like, "You have to take time for you." She's like, "You could go home and do your nails, but for the 20 minutes you're gonna sit here, you can just relax and have someone take care of you."
Yeah.
And that is so important. And that always stuck with me. And it's like, yeah, because like I totally can do my nails myself, but like when do I sit for 20 minutes and just like let the world like leave me alone for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
So that's why I always have a manicure. I'm very much into the powder gel situation, so it's a once a month situation because they
Mm-hmm.
last for 4 weeks.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, oh, girl, I have the
That's
best.
why I don't get my nails done, because I feel like they always like chip or
Mm.
something.
Powder gels is life, no more light, none of that foolishness. It's dip. It's all the dip.
The dip,
Um,
yeah.
it's so good. It lasts for 4 weeks.
Okay, well, I might have to start doing that, because I'm honestly the worst. I'm the person that like yeah, once a month is good for me. I can't do less than that. Like I can't do, or more than that. I can't do the every 2 weeks. Like no, my
No,
nails would be looking crazy.
yeah, it is literally just a 20 minutes. It takes 20 minutes to do it. Like I said, I have my little shop over here. Super nice ladies. They always make me like matcha tea. And it's just it's 20-30 minutes of just letting someone else take care of me. But I do love the interior design thing. So wait, do you do that as like another job of yours? Is that like another part of Ashley Inc.?
Yeah, I've been consulting since I did my own renovation. So yeah, I renovated my home in Brooklyn, and I didn't do the content like I had imagined for myself properly, but I was doing things very casually and kind of giving people the update via Instagram. And I think through that, people were like, wow, like I love your style, like, will you do this for me? So yeah, I started taking on clients here and there, and kind of reinventing their space, whether it be on more of a kind of renovation component, or just like simply a interior design only on like a refurnishing, or paints and artwork and things like that. So it's been really cool. Honestly, it's super fun. People always say like they're not surprised, because I do think that event production and design are very, in line with each other. They're basically sisters.
Yes, I
um,
mean, fully agree with you. I mean, my apartment is designed by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. Me. So,
we have great taste.
it's like I have beautiful taste. So I fully agree with that. But that's great to know. That's awesome to know. And now my last question for you. Do you have an ask or a give to the audience? Or both?
Hmm. My give would, like I said, I do love, and I told you this before we started, that I need to start charging for my consultations. But I really do love giving my opinion if someone trusts me enough to give it. So I guess my give would be, if anyone has any kind of questions when it comes to the event space community, especially. I think community is like the word is definitely much bigger and much more known now than it was when I started in that industry, 9 years ago. But anything in relation to that, I'm so happy to always have like a conversation with anyone that's like interested in events, community, interior, etc. Like, please do reach out. And then my ask would be, I'm on the market. I'm consulting, as I mentioned, but definitely, in search of a really awesome new home for myself when it comes to the next steps in my career. So I guess my ask would be if you or someone is seeking someone with my skill set, I'd love to have that conversation.
Awesome. So here's what I'm going to do. Everyone knows I'm an amazing event person, so I'm going to say the following. Ashley is one of my favorite event people. Hire her. See this as my recommendation for her. She has a beautiful eye, exquisite taste, and she can do interior design. And as I said, and she's such a delight to work with. I have seen her grow and grow over the last almost decade, and it has been the most wonderful thing to see. So if you're listening and you want a really awesome event person, if I could hire you, I would hire you. But she's phenomenal, and wherever you go, we'll be so lucky to have you. Because, like I said, I'm so proud of you, and you're just a delight. And I'm so glad we were able to finally get you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura, for having me. Thank you for being such a great friend over the years. And I'm so proud of you too. Honestly, it's been so great seeing your journey. So I'm just really happy to be here and excited to see and listen to all of the rest of your podcasts as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we'll put details in the show notes to reach out to Ashley for real. Like I said, you want her to consult, pay her. You cannot pick her brain for free. And we want you to continue to grow. But most importantly, just keep shining and being the wonderful person that you are. And with that is our show.